When I turned 43, I didn't expect anything to shift. Birthdays stopped feeling like celebrations years ago. They'd become quiet check-ins, subtle reminders that time keeps moving, even when your world feels paused. It had been half a year since my marriage ended, and I was just beginning to learn the sound of real stillness. Not the silence that presses, but the kind that breathes with you. I manage a boutique travel firm in Charleston, the kind of place where each call whispers of new beginnings. I've arranged honeymoons, solo soul-searching escapes, and last-minute weekend getaways for clients who crave something new. I'd curated so many dream vacations for others, never for myself. Maybe that's why the envelope felt so heavy when my team handed it to me. A handwritten note from my supervisor. 2 round-trip tickets. Remote. Serene. You deserve a slice of peace. I smiled, touched but unsure. Alana, my closest friend, gave me a sly nudge, suggesting we go together. But I hesitated. I didn't want light laughter over drinks or the retelling of old dating escapades. I wanted something quieter. And that's when Caleb came to mind. My son, now 21, was home from college for the summer. He was always observant, thoughtful, quieter than most, with deep-set eyes that looked like they'd seen more than they let on. Ever since I adopted him as a boy, there's been a closeness between us that defied titles. He once held my hand like it grounded him. Now he asked questions that grounded me. That evening, I knocked gently on his door. He was cross-legged on the bed, pencil sketching in his journal, headphones resting loosely around his neck. He looked up, brows raised. "Want to disappear for a while?" I asked. He blinked. "What?" "Just for a week. Somewhere hidden. No Wi-Fi. No plans." His smile grew, slow and unforced. Yeah, I'm in." The retreat was nestled on a tiny island off the coast of Belize, far from anything marked on cruise itineraries. Our bungalow hovered above glass-clear waters, where each night the ocean seemed to whisper secrets only we could hear. The first morning, I woke to gold spilling through woven blinds. Caleb was already outside, shirtless, coffee in hand, watching the water with a look that made him seem older than he was. His silhouette, framed by sky and sea, struck me. "Morning," I said as I stepped out beside him. He turned, smile soft. "Did you sleep okay?" I forgot what real rest felt like. That day we walked barefoot along winding trails, swayed in hammocks, and laughed until our bellies ached as I fumbled my way through paddle boarding. He didn't mock, he laughed like being there with me was more than enough. That evening, with grilled snapper and coconut rice still warm in our bellies, we found ourselves alone on the beach. "Remember when we first met?" I asked, trailing my fingers in the sand. He nodded, eyes distant. "You were wearing a red scarf. I thought you looked like a hero." I laughed quietly. "You held my hand the entire time." "You never let go," he replied. We sat with that for a while. Then he said it, soft, almost unsure. "You've always been my anchor. But lately, I think I'm starting to see you differently." I turned to him, breath caught in my throat, not from surprise, but from the honesty. "What do you mean?" He didn't reply. Not right away. Instead, he stood, extended a hand, and pulled me up. "Walk with me. I need to tell you something." The air was warm in a way that felt personal, like it had been steeped in memory. We wandered the edge of the water, the tide kissing our feet before pulling away again. He walked close, his silence weighty with meaning. "I never told you about last semester," he began. I looked at him, brows knit. "There was this girl. For a while, I thought she might be right for me. She reminded me of you, kind, observant, always taking care of everyone else." I stayed quiet, a knot slowly tightening in my chest. But he paused. Every time she touched me, it felt like I was chasing the echo of something I couldn't name. "Like I was chasing a feeling I'd only ever felt once," he said quietly, but didn't recognize it back then. I stopped walking. Caleb turned to face me, and under the soft glow of the moon, something in his expression shifted. Unguarded, intense, like he had been holding on to this moment for far too long. "When was that?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "That summer I turned 17, he replied. "We went to that mountain retreat your agency sent us on. You remember? You slipped on that rocky path and grabbed my hand to steady yourself." I nodded slowly, the memory resurfacing like a photograph pulled from a dusty box. The trail, the scent of pine and damp moss, the warmth of his palm wrapped tightly around mine. "I was still a teenager," he continued, voice rougher now, "but something happened. Just for a second. It felt different. Like something in me clicked. And it scared me. And I remembered. I remembered the moment too well. The stillness of the woods, the breath caught in my throat, the way my hand had lingered longer than it should have. How I'd pushed the feeling away before it could settle, telling myself it was just instinct, just maternal protectiveness. But now, standing beside the ocean, I couldn't deny it anymore. I had felt it too. I had always chalked that moment up to motherly instinct, brushed it aside before it could take shape into something more dangerous. But now, with the sea wrapped around us like a secret and the island's silence guarding us from the rest of the world, I couldn't pretend anymore. "I think I've always been scared," I said, barely able to hold his eyes. "Not of loving you, but of being loved back in a way that would change everything." Caleb stepped in closer. So close that I could feel the heat radiating from him, even though our skin never touched. "It's never been too much," he murmured, voice low and steady. "Not for me." My breath hitched. Everything, waves, breeze, even the stars, seemed to pause around us. There was no before here. No titles. No expectations. Just this moment, hanging between us like a held breath. "Do you think we're awful people?" I asked, searching his face for regret. He shook his head slowly. "No. I think we're just real. And sometimes, real love doesn't follow the rules the world wants it to." What followed wasn't awkward. It was holy. We didn't step over the edge that night. We didn't need to. But when we walked back to the bungalow, I caught him watching me. And what I saw in his eyes wasn't desire, it was awe. Like he was afraid if he looked away, I'd vanish. And as I lay in bed, the sound of the ocean mingling with the faint creak of the floor under his feet in the next room, I was hit with the most terrifying realization of all. I didn't want to vanish. Sleep refused to come. The air in the room felt thick with honesty, pressing down in quiet waves. The ceiling fan hummed in slow spirals overhead, stirring the heat but not the thoughts crowding my mind. Finally, I got up. I slipped on a robe over my camisole and shorts and padded out into the night. The air kissed my skin with warmth, thick with salt and the scent of damp earth. I welcomed it, like an old love returned. The moon sat low, casting a silver path across the sea, and stars glittered like confessions thrown into the dark. I wandered past the dunes and let the sand take my weight as I lay down, arms beneath my head, eyes tracing constellations. And that was when the pretending stopped. I remembered his voice earlier. I remembered the look that undid me. The words, "It's never been too much." I didn't know what scared me more, whether he meant it, or whether some deep part of me hoped he did. I didn't hear him approach at first. Only the hush of footsteps through sand. Then, a presence beside me.
"Caleb." He didn't speak.
He just lay down beside me, close enough that his presence filled the space between us without a single touch. It felt natural, seamless, like he'd always been meant to be there. I didn't turn my head, but I could feel his gaze settle gently over me. "This sky," he whispered, "doesn't judge." My chest tightened. I turned, slowly. He was lying on his side now, propped on one elbow, face half lit by moonlight. There was something achingly young in his wonder, and something completely adult in the way he looked at me. My breath snagged in my throat as he leaned in. Not bold, not rushed. Just drawn, like a man approaching the edge of something sacred. Our lips never met, but they hovered. So close I could feel the soft rhythm of his breath brushing against mine. For one beat, every part of me screamed yes. But I didn't move. Neither did he. The moment, trembling, infinite, wrapped around us like a second skin. Then I leaned back, just enough to keep the moment suspended. I can't, I breathed. His eyes darkened. Not in rejection, but with something heavier. Because you don't want to, he asked quietly. Or because you're afraid you do? I turned away, eyes stinging with something deeper than tears. I raised you, I whispered. You were mine. You are mine. But not by blood, he said softly, his voice calm and sure. You chose me. Don't forget that. His words landed like fireflies on skin, soft, but impossible to ignore. And that was the cruelest part. He was right. He wasn't born for me. I had chosen him, loved him fiercely, protected him like my own. But what I felt now didn't belong to bedtime stories or bandaged knees. This wasn't something ordinary. It felt ancient, elemental, a collision of instinct and restraint, both wrong and right, all at once. My fingers trembled as I pressed them to my lips, trying to steady the riot in my chest. I shouldn't feel this. He shifted beside me, brushing sand off his forearm, his voice low and sure, cutting through the hush like a confession carried on wind. I shouldn't either, Caleb said. But I do. And if I frighten you, I'll leave right now. Just say it. But I need you to know whatever this is, you're not in it alone. The palm trees rustled softly, like the island was holding its breath, listening to us without judgment.
I didn't reply.
But I didn't ask him to go. And sometimes silence says more than speech ever could.
So we stayed like that.
He sat beside me, his knees drawn, arms resting loosely on them. I lay back, eyes still locked on the stars, wondering what it meant to be held by gravity and unraveling all at once. The ocean had quieted, not gone, just softer, as if it too had decided to pause and listen, not to what we said, but to everything we hadn't dared to. Then, without a word, Caleb reached down and scooped a handful of sand into his palm. I watched him from the corner of my eye, puzzled at first, unsure. He lifted his hand above my feet and slowly let the sand sift through his fingers. It fell in a gentle cascade, like golden dust warmed by the earth, scattering across my skin. My breath caught. Again, the same motion. The sand drifted down in a thin line, now over my ankles, then rising slowly, deliberately up my legs. My shins. My knees. Each movement intentional, quiet, unrushed. I didn't move. I couldn't. Some quiet force inside me stirred, something ancient and instinctual. A sleeping fault line beginning to tremble. It started in my chest, a tightness, a pulse of heat, pressing up into my throat until even the act of breathing felt foreign. His hand paused just above the edge of my robe, and the sand shimmered in the moonlight before it touched down softly on the skin of my thigh. My breath hitched again. And then he looked at me. Not glanced.
Looked. Saw.
There was a question in his gaze. A raw, wordless question that sent everything inside me spinning. "Do you want me to stop?" he asked, his voice barely more than the breeze. I didn't have an answer. Everything within me was torn. Between instinct and identity, memory and yearning, all colliding in this one impossible moment. "I don't know," I said truthfully. "I don't know what I'm doing." He nodded as if he understood that more than anyone. Then he lay down beside me again.
Closer this time.
So close I could feel his warmth in the night air, but He still didn't touch me. I just wanted you to feel, he whispered. That's all. You've been carrying so much for so long. I wanted you to remember what it feels like to just be. And, oh, I felt the weight of years. The ache of restraint. The pulse of desire I hadn't allowed myself to name. Most dangerous of all, I felt hope. Hope that maybe wanting closeness wasn't a betrayal. That maybe this strange, distant place, so far removed from logic, from roles, from scrutiny, could hold something tender and unspoken. I turned to him, face open to the starlight. I don't know where this leads, I whispered. His fingers, still dusted with sand, reached out and brushed a few delicate grains from my collarbone. Neither do I, he replied softly. But I'm not afraid to find out. The stars above didn't flinch. They shimmered back, vast and knowing. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I didn't feel alone beneath them. I don't know how long we stayed like that, caught in the hush between breath and thought. The sky remained still, but inside me, everything shifted. I wanted to stay in that quiet forever. I wanted to preserve the fragile line we hadn't crossed. But my body had its own language, and it wasn't listening. My heartbeat shifted, no longer familiar, a rhythm rewritten by something I couldn't name but couldn't ignore. Caleb moved closer. Just an inch, then another. I felt it, that fragile warmth of his breath near my cheek, like a secret exhale he didn't mean to share. My chest rose too quickly. My fingers gripped the edge of my robe, suddenly hyper-aware of every sensation. The softness of my own skin beneath the fabric. The vulnerability crackling between us. His closeness. His presence. No, I whispered, barely a sound. More to myself than to him. This isn't right. I turned onto my side, facing away. My arms folded tightly across my chest like a shield made of habit and fear. But he didn't move. He stayed. Not pressing. Not touching. Just there, quiet and steady, like he'd always been. Waiting. Letting me choose. I squeezed my eyes shut, silently begging the heat inside me to subside. Praying the weight of this moment would dissolve into the stillness of night. But it didn't. Instead, thoughts came in murmurs. He's not your blood. You raised him. Yes, but he chose you, too. My hands curled into fists, nails digging into my palms. My entire body trembled, too full, too alive. And then, I turned back. Slowly, hesitantly, but deliberately. He was already watching me. The moon caught in his eyes like liquid light. I raised my hands, unsure whether to shield myself or reach for him. They hovered there, conflicted, trembling, before gently lowering. And then it was me. I moved. Barely, but enough. Our lips met, delicate as breath. Uncertain, trembling. The faintest touch, like the first line of a poem you've waited years to write. In that kiss was everything. Birthday mornings, scraped knees, lullabies, long drives. But also something new. Something unspoken until now. This wasn't a memory. It was now. His hand came up, not to pull me in, but to cradle my face, gentle, reverent, full of understanding. The way you hold something you never want to break. I melted, not because I decided to, but because there was nothing left to fight. The kiss didn't roar. It whispered. It unfolded. And when it ended, I gasped, not in fear, but in grief for the space he left behind. My fingers pressed to my lips. Still warm. Caleb's voice came quiet, calm. You don't have to say anything. But I did. I needed to. I don't know what this makes me. I breathed. He reached out, taking my hand, holding it between us like a secret. It makes you human. I closed my eyes and let it land. For so long I had only known how to be roles: mother, worker, caregiver, dutiful wife. Always what was needed. Always what was expected. But tonight, I had simply been a woman. And tomorrow? I didn't know. But I wasn't ready to be sorry. Not yet.